All right, so welcome to Logic class. One thing I'm going to be trying to do throughout the semester is recording classes and then posting them on YouTube and making a link available. So this may be a bad recording, but we'll find out. Today's an experimental day in many ways. So I wrote a statement on the board, or an argument actually is what this is. You can call it an argument or a syllogism, but it's got 3 lines, and each line has a statement. So first line, all men are mortal. Second line, Socrates is a man. Third line, therefore Socrates is immortal. So, hey. Yes. Yeah. So, you can take a seat. What's your name?
Cole.
Cole. All right.
Hi, Cole.
Hi, Cole.
Hi, Cole.
Do you have a hobby you would like to share? That's what we're doing for attendance. So. Okay. Now, so anyway, we're going to be mostly dealing with arguments that are formed in this kind of a way. We're in what's called formal logic, aka traditional logic. And we'll get into what that means shortly. First, I'm going to do some kind of just housekeeping stuff. Now, does anybody have a waiver or the last page of your Libertas handbook signed that you need to turn in? Okay, probably not. Has everyone already been in a class today? Okay, anybody not? All right, so you probably then are all familiar with the fact that you are going to be getting your assignments on Praxis School. You should all have a student account that you were set up with, I guess. Hi, Roy. You can find a seat wherever. And so anyway, you'll be getting your assignments on Praxis School. And I've actually already posted all of the assignments for this class. This is a 1-semester class. So you can find everything we're doing for the whole semester already up there. The way that I've listed your assignments is what I believe all your other teachers are doing, but if it turns out that I'm not doing it the same way as them, please let me know, because I want to make sure that what I'm doing is standardized. I have your assignments listed with the due date written as the date that they're actually assigned. So in other words, the homework that you'll be doing this week, on Praxis School it says the due date is today, but that's not true. So what I actually have done is on all of the homework assignments, I've written at the top of the assignment, parentheses, due, and then I say the date that you're actually turning it in. Does that make sense? And the reason I did it that way, first of all, is because I believe that that is what everybody else is doing, so I'm just standardizing it, hopefully, and if not, tell me. But secondly, it's because that'll allow you to see the assignments longer and farther in advance. And then just note the dates that I've actually written in. I've also written lesson plans, but just a summary of what we were doing on every day. So if you miss class, then you can see the lesson plan on Praxis School too, and it'll just say like, okay, we introduced chapter 5 or something like that. You had your hand up, yes.
That's multiple teachers have said that's how they're doing it.
Good, thank you. All right, that's encouraging. Because there was instructions to do that way in an email, but that was like back in like June or July or something. So I'm always like, oh, I hope everybody else read it, and I hope they understood it the same way I did. So note that this class, I'm going to give you a syllabus now. It's got 3 exams, and they're going to just basically each be on 5 chapters. And I'm not planning to make them extremely difficult. I'm planning to make them a lot like the homework and a lot like the quizzes that are in the book, if you have a version of the book that has quizzes. You can just take and pass. Make sure everyone gets one. If you don't get one, tell whoever has the stack. And the exams, I underlined them on the syllabus. So it's basically every 5 weeks we have an exam, which you will take in class. But the majority of your grade, I have the breakdown at the bottom, 70% of your grade is just having the homework completed. It's not even your accuracy, it's just that you completed it and turned it in on time. So it shouldn't be a hard class to get an A in, and overall, this class shouldn't be a ton of work, but that being said, I hope you'll take it seriously enough to, actually do well in it. The thing with this class, and usually this is true for other classes, but especially for logic, all of your knowledge builds. So if you basically, like, if you don't pay attention at the beginning, then it's kind of like having a Jenga tower with the bottom layer just one block, you know? So everything builds. And this class probably will not get confusing as long as you do your work and keep up with the readings. But if you know, especially somewhere at the beginning, if you kind of get off track, then things may get a little bit confusing. So again, the majority of the class is just turning in your homework on time. As is the case with all Libertas classes, if the homework is late and not excused beforehand, then it's a 0, so that's a big deal. Especially because I'm only going to be collecting homework 15 times, or 14 times, so that's like 1/14 of 70% of your grade, so that kind of stinks if you get a 0. So be careful, just be punctual and you'll be good. When I collect your homework, I want it to be graded, and so you have an answer key that you purchased. The books, for me, are those mine or yours? Well, everyone's going to have the same textbook, and I'm just going to borrow those if that's fine. So there's a teacher key and a student workbook. Some of you will have the 2nd edition, some of you will have the 3rd edition. It's fine if you have either. And I apologize because I sent you guys links at the beginning of the summer, like your parents, to the 2nd editions of the book, because the 2nd editions just had a couple advantages. And then those links changed to where the links actually then, like the website selling it over the course of the summer, they switched it from selling 2nd editions to 3rds, but they kept the same link. So when you guys went to buy 2nd editions, it took you to 3rds. So then I thought, okay, well, I'll just use this other website that clearly has a picture of a 2nd edition book, and it's labeled 2nd edition. So click on there, and you'll order 2nd edition books, of course. And it was a reputable site that I've used before and trusted. Turns out if you clicked on that, then when it comes time to order it, it says it's a 3rd edition book. And some of you have ordered that, you know, trying to get 2nd edition, and it came back 3rd edition. So that's crazy bad luck, I guess. But both of my links like either changed or were inaccurate. But it actually doesn't matter too much. As long as you have your workbook and teacher key are one of the 2 editions, you'll be fine. So sorry for the confusion on that, any consternation that caused your parents. But you're fine with whatever you have. All right, anything else I need to go over? Bookkeeping wise, or housekeeping wise, I mean, thankfully not bookkeeping. You probably heard everything else really at this point about just how Libertas in general classes are operating. But again, just consult the handbook if you ever have any questions, and definitely remember that late stuff is a 0, and stuff that is not graded is counted as incomplete, so that'll hurt your grade too. All right. So now we can begin, and we're going to jump into talking about, first of all, what types of logic there are, because that's what this introductory chapter that you're going to read this week is about. So each week you will have a chapter to read, and in one of the weeks you're going to have 2 chapters. So I'm just going to warn you right now, there's one week that has more homework because we're covering 2 chapters. But even if you were to double the homework for this class, it would be kind of like going from probably like, 1 or 2 hours of homework a week to 2 to 4. And we'll also try to, on that particular week, get a lot of the homework as much as we can done in class so that you don't have way too much. But even this book actually recommends combining the 2 chapters I'm combining that week. It is a logical thing to do. It's just more work on that one week. So brace yourself for the week on the syllabus that says we're doing chapters 6 and 7 at the same time. Just because there's a little bit more homework than usual. All right, didn't want you to be without a warning on that. So anyway, each week you will have a chapter, or in that one situation, 2 chapters to read, and then you're going to have exercises in your workbook. And hope it's okay, I'm just helping myself to your book. In the workbook, you're going to find that each chapter's exercises are labeled as exercises for day 1, exercises for day 2, for day 3. You don't have to do them that way, but it would be better if you did. They're actually spaced out that way, and you may have noticed something in the past, as you've been doing different classes that required some memorization or things like that. Is it better when you're memorizing something to, I don't know, memorize stuff for 2 hours straight 1 day a week, or like half an hour a day 4 days a week? What usually works better?
More spread out.
More spread out, absolutely, yes. And so if you do this gradually, you know, the way that they paste it, day 1, day 2, day 3, it'll probably stick better. You don't have to, but I highly recommend it. Make sense? Okay, and then when you grade your stuff, you or your parent can, it's up to you. Make sure that it is clear that it's been graded so that I can count it as a complete, you know, that it's been graded. So, you know, put check marks next to it or have your parents write like graded and initial it or something so that I can tell. And I will be not collecting your homework, but I will be spot checking it in class. I'll give you exercises to do like together, and I'll go around and I'll just check off that you've all done your homework. And that's going to be how your homework grade will be based. So make sure you always bring your workbook to class, because if you don't, it'll be a 0 that day. Anyway, in your answer key, your teacher key there, that's going to give you the answers to all of your exercises so that you can come graded. Now don't have this open while you're in front of you while you're doing your homework, because you're not going to probably learn very much. So that's even specifically in the Libertas handbook. Like, use your answer key to grade after the fact. Don't use it just like during. If you're totally stumped on something, like you have no idea how to answer it, then, you know, and you've like read the book like 3 times and you still can't figure it out, maybe like, I don't know, ask your parent for a hint out of this or something. But, you know, basically don't rely on this as you're doing homework. Thank you very much. All right, so what is logic? Any thoughts?
Like, quote, correct thinking.
Very good, I like that. That's really good. Correct thinking. I'm just going to write down everything you guys say. But that's very good. What else?
Sensical thought processes.
I like that. Sensical thought processes. I'll say sensible, but it's the same thing. Yeah. What else? Those are really good. They're actually very good. So one of the things about logic, the type of logic we're doing, actually I like that you have processes and correct thinking as well. You know, just basically as a process, it's a way of thinking, it's a method of thinking that we're really going to be studying. So for example, in this right here, this is called a syllogism. And the syllogism is going to be 3 logically arranged like propositions. And so each of these 3 lines, we can call its own statement or proposition. That's not got a lot of life to it. Here. So our 3 propositions are: number 1, all men are mortal, Socrates is a man, and Socrates is immortal. I'm kind of jumping ahead to go to propositions right now, but I just wanted to point out that it's made up of 3 statements, and the idea behind the syllogism is that if statement 1 is true and if statement 2 is true, then statement 3 should be true as well. What are we really seeing here? We're seeing that this argument, this syllogism, that Socrates is mortal, it's not just something you make up. You don't just say, Socrates is immortal. And then someone's like, oh, well, how do you know he's immortal? Oh, I don't know, but I just know it's true. Is that logical?
Argumentation instead of assertive.
Yeah, that's very good. You're not just asserting a point, you're actually backing it. That's excellent, yes. And so the way that we know that this is going to be true is under 2 conditions. Condition number 1 is that you arranged your argument correctly. And condition number 2 is that each of the propositions is true. Because you can have, you can say all men are immortal, Socrates is a man, therefore Socrates is immortal. Would that be a true statement in the end? No, unless you're talking about the immortality of the soul, but we're not really going there. So that would be an incorrect statement, but would it be logically set up? Would it have the right form?
Yes.
Yeah, it would. So anyway, when you're dealing with formal or traditional logic, what you're doing is you're actually doing, you're focusing not on whether or not your argument is true or your statements are true, so much as you're focusing on, did you set it up right? Did you use the correct process? So let's talk about this type of logic versus others. And I'll warn you that the reading this week, it starts out pretty dry, and you'll be like, what are they even talking about? Because it talks about a whole bunch of different types of logic and drops a bunch of names of philosophers. But once you get past that, it's actually a meaty, even introductory chapter they're going to be doing this week. But just to hit on some of the drier stuff at the beginning, they talk about different types of logic. So, and each of these is like its own branch of logic. So we got what we're going to study, which is like formal logic. Or traditional logic. And that term form has to do with like structure. What is the form of something? It's its structure. So like this statement here, we've got a structure, a definite structure. Proposition 1, proposition 2, and then proposition 3, all working together to make a syllogism. And formal logic, then, first of all, just mention that it was founded by Aristotle. There's a philosopher named Immanuel Kant who refers to him as the father of logic. And Aristotle was a Greek philosopher about 2,300 years ago. You have a lineage in Athenian philosophers from Socrates in Athens, and then Plato, and then Aristotle. Each one of those taught the other one. And Aristotle actually was a very interesting guy. He tutored Alexander the Great. He was kind of the big organizer of the philosophers. Like, he kind of set things in order. He actually founded lots of different sciences and classified them. So he would be the guy who says, you know, this particular studies in the field of biology, and this particular studies in the field of chemistry, and whatever. You know, so he liked to organize things. So it makes sense that he would be about structure. You know, that his branch of logic would be about the form of things and organizing your thoughts. Formal logic is going to be concerned with the form of reasoning. And not so much with the truth of your argument, necessarily. It's good if you can use formal logic to create true arguments, but the actual study of formal logic is about the structure, not whether or not the end result is true. Does that make sense? So, you know, it would be like if you said, all men are fish sticks. Socrates is a man, therefore Socrates is a fish stick. Somebody would be like, that's absurd, but Aristotle would be like, very good, because you have the right structure to your argument, even if the outcome is untrue. But then there's another type of logic that is just another big branch. They list some other branches that I'm not really going to get into. But there's material logic. Material logic is going to be the branch that's going to be concerned about the content of the argument. Or you could say the truth. Of the argument. Deals with the truths of terms and propositions. We'll talk about what terms and propositions are later. Sorry, everybody over there. I'm kind of blocking you so that the camera can see. I'm going to say props instead of propositions. But some other types of logic, just so you know. There's symbolic logic, which was formed by another Greek philosopher who wasn't, he was around not too long after Aristotle. There's also induction, which was something that in the 19th century John Stuart Mill developed. There's different types of more modern mathematical logic that have been created by different philosophers. But formal logic is what we're doing in this class. Questions, thoughts, anything before we move on? So the type of logic we're doing in class, what is it mostly concerned with?
Structure.
Structure, very good. All right. That's the main thing I wanted to get out of all of that. All right, I'm going to clear the board a bit. And how many of you, like, you know, when you signed up for this class, it was like, oh, logic, I know what that is and I want to do it. Or as opposed to like, my parents made me do this, I have no idea what this is. So that's good.
I like Greek philosophy.
What's that?
I like Greek philosophy.
Nice,
I
okay.
get into early Greek philosophy, and it's interesting.
Awesome, yes, so you would know about this some. I actually teach philosophy classes too, they're my favorite. But yeah, Hessu is just like, oh, my parents made me do this, I guess, I don't know. So just before we move on, just to kind of hit that point a little harder about the difference between, you know, like formal logic, looking at the structure, versus other types of logic. You know, looking for like whether or not it's true in the case of material logic. G.K. Chesterton, who he's kind of like C.S. Lewis, but he said logic is not necessarily an instrument for finding out truth. On the contrary, truth is a necessary instrument for using logic. What do you think he means by that?
I mean,
You can't be logical without truth.
yeah.
So you can you create an argument that is logically structured without truth?
No.
Yeah, you can. All men are fish sticks. Socrates is a fish stick, therefore Socrates is a fish stick. But, sorry, Socrates is a man. That was not logical and form when I said it first time. But are you going to get anywhere? Like, is that actually going to benefit you unless you were applying true premises?
No.
Not necessarily. So, yeah, so he's saying that you're not going to use the structure. He's saying, like, let's see, logic is not necessarily an instrument for finding out truth. On the contrary, truth is a necessary instrument for using logic. And he says, for the discovery of further truth, he says, briefly, you can find truth with logic if you have already found it without truth. So, or found truth without it. So, what does he mean? That you can only find truth with logic if you have already found truth without it? Well, take a look at this syllogism. What is the only new information that you're developing out of this argument? Yeah.
Therefore, Socrates is a man.
Exactly. So to make that statement, we made it logically. It is logical and it is true. But we can only make this true statement if we start out with two other truths that we've already figured out outside of the syllogism. So we've already figured out that all men are mortal. And we've already figured out that Socrates is a man. So logic is the process of taking truths you already know and structuring them in a way that you can find new truth. Does that make sense? So the old truths that you already knew were premise 1, or proposition 1, all men are mortal, and proposition 2, Socrates is a man. And then out of that, you know, their powers combined, you get a new proposition, a new truth that you've developed. So that's the beauty of logic. You take what you know and you assemble it in the right way, and you get new truth. Well-founded new conclusions. All right. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the parts of an argument. And we can just use this one as a template for doing this. Oh, actually, sorry, one last thing. Just to give you some terms for what I've already been saying. Validity versus soundness. So an argument is valid when it means that it is logical. I'll just say an argument is valid and I'll kind of tweak the definition myself because I think this will be a better way of saying this out of context from the book. An argument is valid if it's constructed logically. So that fish stick argument is valid. But an argument is only sound if it is both valid and true. So I'm not wording this definition quite the way the book is. I'm kind of simplifying it. An argument is sound if it's both valid, meaning structured correctly, and true, meaning that the arguments that you're making out of it, like the premises or the propositions, are actually accurate. So can an argument be true or false? What do you think?
Either.
This is a trick question. You're probably going to be wrong. So can a proposition be true or false? For example, can all men are mortal be true or false?
Yeah.
So yes to that, but to the argument is either valid or invalid. So it's either like logical or illogical. So each proposition is going to be true or false. Either all men are equal is true or it's false. But then this entire argument is either going to be like valid or invalid. And if the whole argument is built on true propositions and it's valid, then it's going to be sound. Does that make sense? All right. So I'm going to give you guys a little bit of an exercise right now. And you can do this in groups if you want with your table. I would like you to come up with the following. And just build all your arguments this way. Do it like exactly like this. Because what's probably going to happen is if you venture out of this exact thing at this stage, this early in the course, you're probably going to make a bunch of arguments that aren't actually valid without meaning to. But do your best to just use exactly that form, and I want you to come up with as many as you can in the next, I don't know, maybe like 5-10 minutes, probably 10 minutes, of arguments that are number one, have true premises, or sorry, true propositions. I keep saying premises. Don't do what I'm doing. True propositions, but are invalid. And I haven't shown you an example of this, but does anyone think you can invent an argument that has true propositions, but is not valid?
You want me to give
Yeah.
one?
Yeah, give an example. I haven't shown you how to do this yet, so
Yeah.
I'll be impressed.
But couldn't you do something like?
You could just skip to the last line. of
Yeah,
that.
you could.
Yeah, I do want you to have 3, but you're right, you could do that.
You could-
So I'll make an added requirement that you need to have 3 propositions.
Okay.
Alright.
But you're totally, that was a great strategy.
You could say like, now I'm stumped because I had one in my brain, but then it like disappeared.
Actually, let's do it this way. Anya, give me a proposition that's true. Just as something is something that is true.
All dogs are animals.
All dogs are animals, all right? Ian, give me a totally unrelated one.
These floor tiles are 24 inches by 24 inches.
Okay, these are, so I guess I could say 2 square foot floor tiles. And Rory, give me a third.
Therefore.
Just anything that's true that is something is something.
This table's white.
Good, okay. So we could say, all dogs are animals. These floor tiles are 2 feet by 2 feet. Therefore, these tables are white. Was that a valid syllogism?
Yeah.
But where its premise is true. So yeah, it wasn't valid, but the premises were true, and the end result, the argument, was not logically founded. It's just so happened that each of those statements was true, but they were unrelated, so it wasn't a logically built argument. And you guys haven't studied yet exactly why that was illogical, but you can just tell, right? Later on, you'll know exactly why it was illogical. But you can just tell, they're not related, it's illogical. So come up with, as a table, some examples of true propositions, or arguments that have three true propositions but are invalid. And it doesn't have to be just total non sequiturs like that. It could be like, you know, all men are mortal, Socrates is a fish, therefore Socrates is a well, no, that wouldn't be true. I'm sorry. I don't know.
Mortal, Socrates is a mortal,
I'm sure
therefore
someone's
Socrates
named
is
the
a man.
fish
Oh,
Socrates.
very good. Yeah. Okay. So he just gave a great example. If you say all men are mortal, Socrates is a mortal, therefore Socrates is a man. Is that true? Now all the statements are true, but is it valid?
No.
Could it be possible that Socrates is a mortal but not a man? Could he be a
Fish.
yeah? He could be a fish. Fish are mortal too, right? So yeah, that would be an example. So you could just do total non sequiturs like my first example, but if you do something like that would be really good. All right, so that's the first thing I wanted to come up with examples of. Second one, arguments that are valid but have false premises. So that would be where it's constructed correctly, like all men are fish sticks. Socrates is a man, therefore Socrates is a fish stick. Valid but false premises or propositions. Don't say premises like I've been doing all class. Propositions. I hate it when I do that. And then the third, come up with actual arguments that are sound, meaning the premise or the propositions are true and the argument is valid. All right, so take a few minutes, do that with your table, and let me know if you need help. I'm available for that.
We should probably change that.
Oh, you mean with camera?
Okay.
I'm curious which table can come up with the
Nobody
most.
else.
Yeah.
Oh, we're going for quantity? Quality? Okay.
Every one of them has to meet the criteria, but other than that, no, it's just pure quantity.
Okay. Well,
So-
that shirt is red.
I'll give you 10 minutes.
This book is a rectangle. Therefore,
Bow is yellow.
therefore, bow is no, because that's not true.
Yeah, you don't have grounded. At least I don't think so.
So, let's try again.
Green.
Screen.
With the sound, no. Sound.
We all starting with sound?
Okay. Arrow is green.
Wait, which one are y'all starting with?
Yeah, we're doing sound.
No, we're doing true propositions, but are invalid.
No, I thought we were already.
No.
You're doing propositions of each of these three types.
Oh,
I'm sorry,
we're
arguments
doing
of
some of
each.
each one, okay.
Yeah.
Alright,
True
so,
propositions that are invalid. Okay.
pencil's round. This book is a square.
Therefore,
Therefore.
your shirt is red.
Therefore, my shirt's red.
And write them down,
Oh,
because we're going to share them.
come on. What's this thing?
Oh, okay. Well, I'm not gonna write the tempo.
Okay.
So you write that. I didn't even see the X.
And
And it's black.
book.
Yeah, now we gotta do something that's valid, but.
I should have done this before, but I'm going to pause the recording because this is dead time to the camera.
Therefore. Shirt
Is it
is
pause?
green.
You know,
So
actually,
it's-
because of the way my computer is zoomed in, I don't think I can pause it. I think I can only stop it, so I'm not going to do that. Sorry, viewers at home. There's going to be several minutes of dead
I
time,
was
so
about
skip
to say,
ahead.
now that the camera's gone, we can talk bad things about it behind his back.
You can skip ahead 8 minutes.
Okay, it's valid but false propositions.
8 minutes and 20 seconds.
Therefore,
Fish? Well, you gotta keep it up to you gotta keep it up to
okay, hold on.
Fish
Fish.
are green. No, wait, no.
Fish are all green. Every one of them.
Fish are male.
Alright, I finished the first one.
Fish are mammals.
I finished the first one.
Mammals are dead. Therefore, fish are dead.
No. Mammals are living.
Mammals are.
No, because that would be false propositions.
Mammals can be dead and living. That's true.
Mammals lay eggs.
Mammals lay eggs,
Yeah.
therefore fish are dead.
Okay, so which
That would be
But
fine.
fish are dead.
Fish aren't mammals.
I know.
technically.
Fish, oh, I see. Fish are mammals.
Fish lay eggs. No, fish lay eggs.
Yes, it is.
It's
the second one.
Fish lay eggs. Cockroaches are
Okay, good. So that'd be a good example of Number one.
Hang on.
Yeah.
Fishes are mammals.
Because it's invalid. so-
Mammals have fur, therefore fishes have fur.
Yeah.
Yeah, so be number two and then be number three.
Well, that would be true then. Mammals have fur, it's true.
Yeah, but fishes don't.
No, we don't. We have hairs.
Mammals have
Wait, no, would that be true?
No, that's actually no.
No, but that is still the
Not
thing.
saying mammals.
All men are fish
Sorry,
sticks.
mean
Socrates
all
is a
mammals have
man.
fur, which not all.
So you can relate it to the first one, even if
Alright,
that
we're
is
just gonna do
true.
that.
Yeah, so the second
That's
one
good
is
enough.
true.
Yeah,
as
the
long as
second
one of
one's
them is
true.
false is fine. I don't mind as long as one is
Anyway.
Alright,
false.
so fish
Sound argument. That
are
was green. Green wolves.
Sound arguments.
mammals have
Here. All men are mortal, but with a man or a boy. And
A child.
that's child.
wow.
He is a man child.
Therefore.
Wow. Wow.
All child are
Therefore, all child is mortal. Children are children.
children.
That's the word.
Arrows are called arrows. Arrow.
Arrow is called
Arrow is fun.
Yeah.
Therefore, arrow is
Yeah, do that.
makes sense.
Not sound.
It depends really.
I know.
Because that, I mean, that would be. That would go on a number two.
Well,
Okay,
it
so what do we
has to
do?
be on Wednesdays. It has to be
There
on Wednesday.
Oh, okay.
For fish hair. Okay.
Or arrows are called arrows. Arrows, name is arrow, therefore arrow is man.
Alright.
Yeah,
No.
we got it.
Pat.
I'm gonna try something with this camera while we're taking a break.
Therefore, your eyes are a backpack.
Dang it, why did we take so long on that? This.
I already told you.
I know. Yeah, I know.
So, this is for my guitar class. These are the fall songs. I have an equally large, actually slightly larger one for spring songs. But it's 3 songs per week for 10 students for 15 weeks. So it's like
Four different
450
songs that
pages.
we're each going to learn.
Yep, at the rate of 3
Are we
weeks.
learning guitar for logic?
I'm so confused on where this came out of.
I'm bringing this.
Musical theory is very logical and progress logically.
It actually is, yes. I'm bringing this out as a, you know, to raise up my tripod. See if that helps.
It's a bird. Could be a bird. There's a big bird.
Does that better come off in one?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's a little
No,
better.
it's
Wait, the sticks
a. All men child
Wait,
are
wait.
mortal.
The
No,
sticks.
it's a man
Now listen,
child.
listen. The sticks are food.
Yeah, you can kind of read that. That's
Fish
great.
are fish sticks, therefore fish are food.
Fish are friends, not food.
Yes.
No.
Girlfriend, not food.
Seafood is gross.
Oh, come on. How can you not like seafood?
Seafood.
You have to like some seafood. Do you like
I actually know a
salmon
pescatarian.
or shrimp or?
My cousin was a pescatarian.
Crab.
But, it was weird. It was while he lived with us, so it was really weird. But it was just fish in our freezer all the time. It was just fish.
Would he eat squid?
I didn't pay attention to him. But
Okay.
Sushi.
He just kept fish in our freezer.
I don't like seafood.
Yeah, I know. Sushi's disgusting.
Sushi.
I've actually never tried it, so there.
Alright, it sounds like everybody's probably done, right?
No.
No.
Okay, keep going.
I didn't write
We're
it
still
down.
trying to do sound.
You guys had one.
Yeah, but with a man child.
Okay, no, don't use that. Because I'm
That
a
was
child
going with the
man.
cat.
I'm a child man, back off. Harrison is a Grinch. Daniel's a Grinch.
Therefore, here's the name of the group.
They're both
Harrison is Daniel.
Therefore, Daniel's name.
Yeah, it's Daniel Harrison.
I'll be especially impressed if any of your like non-valid arguments are like fallacies or things that people normally get wrong. Yes.
Also, I do pictures for.
Oh, nice.
Okay, I got here. Write one down, but appropriate. Appropriate. Arrow.
Diagrams actually will really help you to
Why don't
tell
we
if
just do one
something is valid.
You are dumb. You are dumb. I am sorry.
Yeah, sure, okay, I'm fine with it.
Daniel's smart. Some people aren't smart. Therefore, Daniel's not smart.
That's logical, that's logical and correct. Not
Oh,
correct,
no.
but,
Here, we'll just say this.
it sounds logical, it sounds logical. It's not correct. It's,
Daniel.
Daniel was jealous of his brother.
Am I though?
Wow.
I mean, do I want to look like
Yes.
Daniel?
Smart.
Prohibition?
Smart.
No, he still looks his home. You know, steroids, so see.
Can't get his eyes.
Did you figure it out though? What do you think?
This might even be wrong. But it was complimenting Daniel, so I'm fine with it. It says Daniel is smart. Smart people go to logic class. Therefore, Daniel goes to logic class.
Not all smart people
Well,
are
then you
logic
didn't have
class.
anything to do with me. That's like,
Wait, you don't need to.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be.
oh.
It's okay.
Let's switch it to Bo instead of me.
I'm not smart. Is that funny?
You guys are just.
And it's all on camera.
I know. Is his arms in like a pool of blood, or is it like tucked under his knees?
I think he's like doing
No,
this.
that's the
like,
one I saw.
like this.
What?
I think he's doing this.
The
He's
whale,
either like doing this, he's like mad, or he's just like
the
scared.
whale ate his arms.
He looks happy to me.
I.
That's not, those aren't lips, that's his chin.
Oh, right.
That's his chin.
Wait,
It kind of looks like he's.
then why does he have
So,
skin? Which
We are back. And there's something that I should have defined before, but I overlooked it in my notes. Sorry. So, what is truth? Which, you know,
Correspondence
sadly
with
today we
reality.
kind of need to define that. But correspondence with reality. Does
I
it
do
correspond
that.
with reality? You know, but hopefully everyone didn't really need that definition. but you know, I actually got a text from one of my former roommates who's like a fellow worship leader and goes to the same church, and he said there were actually like paid faculty members at a college right then when he texted me, like tweeting about how 2 + 2 = 5, and any argument otherwise is just evidence that you live in Western culture, which has tainted you into thinking that 2 + 2 has to equal 4. And that's the world we live in today. You know,
What?
that's an extreme example, but that's and I could go through like the philosophical history of how things got to where people make claims like that. But for that reason, I'm glad that this book actually says truth is correspondence with reality, because even that can get lost this day and age very easily. Yes.
Why?
How
If you
did?
like read their argument, why did they say 2 + 2 is 5?
Yeah, like how
Yeah,
did
I
they
didn't read it.
explain it?
But I can probably tell you a bit of the, actually, well, not to go too far, but to go into my other philosophy
2
classes.
+ 2 doesn't
Yeah.
equal 5, it equals fish.
Yeah, and so you could just as easily say that, yeah. And but it kind of goes back to there's sort of a. Do you guys want me to go off on a little bit of a spiel on this?
Yes.
Okay, I'll try to be very quick.
No, take your time.
In Western philosophy, and actually it's really interesting because if you look at like the biblical culture, the culture that came up with the Old Testament, we have
You can define yourself as someone who believes 2 + 2
Hebrew
is
culture,
5.
all right, and then you have Greek culture, and in the case of like the Hebrew understanding of truth, the Hebrew understanding of truth is that all truth is one, and you see all of that truth anchored in one God. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is one, and as it says in the Old Testament. And in Greek culture, you still have a strong sense of logic, but you have an idea that there can be truth that's sort of more abstract and propositional and like doesn't necessarily apply to you in everyday life. And remember how we said that we have Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, right? And Aristotle's the third in that line of Athenian philosophers. Plato is kind of a good example of how Greek thought kind of sees truth a little differently than Hebrew thought. He saw the world as divided into two, that there's a physical world, which is governed by one set of principles, and then there's a world of ideas which is governed by other principles. And so Greek thought allows a little bit more room for truth to be like, out there, abstract, not concrete, not applying universally to everything, and especially not to have all truth anchored in one being who is God. Why does 2 + 2 = 4? Hebrew mindset, because God said so, because God made it that way. But then fast forward, and you have different philosophers pointing out that maybe truth is subjective because like we're all biased in different ways. Our minds don't really see things objectively. Like Immanuel Kant sort of started that, although I don't think he went very far, and I actually liked a lot of his ideas. Then you have a guy named Kierkegaard, who basically says, well, anything that actually matters is purely just a matter of like your own opinion. You can't actually prove it. So he would say, yeah, you can prove 2 + 2 = 4. That's what Kierkegaard would say. But he would say that whether or not God is real, whether he loves you, whether he forgives your sins, he would say those things are purely a matter of faith. They have no, they can't at all be objectively proved, and it's just purely a matter of faith. And so then after him comes a guy named Nietzsche, who learns from him and follows in his philosophical footsteps. And Nietzsche is the one who famously says God is dead. You guys heard that before? But here's what Nietzsche does. So you have Kant basically saying, okay, well, we're subjective. We can't really see things exactly as they are because we're humans, we're flawed. Then we have Kierkegaard, well, anything that really matters, you can't prove at all. It's purely about faith, so you can't back it with reason, you can't back it with logic. And then Nietzsche takes it a step farther and says, well, the only way that anything could be objectively true, the only way things could actually be reality is if they were anchored in God. In other words, if truth was wrapped up in God, if he was the judge who said 2 + 2 = 4, not 5 or fish sticks. But he said, I don't believe God is real, I think God is dead. So that means everything falls apart. All truth, all goodness, all morality, they all collapse. That's what Nietzsche said. And he wrote about that in a way where he was saying, like, now it's our responsibility to create truth for ourselves individually. And he basically said, like, whoever's most successful in doing that should be like basically the most powerful person in society. And it doesn't matter if they go out and massacre everybody. They're just doing their own thing to create truth. And if they're the strongest at enforcing their truth, then they should be on top. And that's Nietzsche. And everything kind of snowballs into oblivion after Nietzsche, because he basically pointed out really what people have said is like he was the first atheist philosopher, meaning one who doesn't believe in God, who actually like pointed out the full implications of atheism, which is if you take God out of the equation, you lose truth, you lose logic, you lose every standard. He writes about it and he says like there is no up, there is no down, there is no everything. And he just goes on and everything collapses. So that's my short answer, which was sort of long, but was that helpful at all?
It's interesting.
And it goes farther from Nietzsche. After Nietzsche, you have like, he was an existentialist, and you have a postmodernist movement where like, things really get into like debating whether or not we can even have one definition for words, and agree upon definitions for words, and things get even crazier. So there's a few things we need to hit real quick, and you'll read about them. So these are the components of an argument. They are mental acts that then you express verbally. So if I have a simple apprehension, what that basically means, and you don't have to fully grasp this because there's actually like a whole chapter on each of these that we're going to hit in the future. Chapter 1 is this, chapter 2 is this, chapter 3 is this. But a simple apprehension is where I think, give me just like a noun. Dog, all right. Are there lots of different kinds of dogs?
Yeah.
Are there lots of different things that dogs do?
Yeah.
Is there a whole lot that's contained in the idea of dog?
Yeah.
But when I have the idea of dog in my head, that is a simple apprehension. I'm coming up with a concept and I'm understanding that concept and grabbing it with my mind. That's simple apprehension. But then when I write down the word dog to describe that concept, that is a term. So dog is the term, simple apprehension is the concept of a dog in my mind that I'm representing with the word dog. Does that make sense? Okay. So we have how many terms in here? Our terms are men, Socrates, and I'm not going to count man as a separate term. The other one is mortal. So believe it or not, in this whole thing, there's only 3 terms. Then we have a judgment, and a judgment is when you decide something is something else. For example, when you judge someone, you'd be like, "Look at that person. I think they're stupid." Don't do that. Judge not that you be not be judged, or lest you be judged. But when you do that, when you make a judgment, you're saying something equals something else. All right. Are there judgments in line 1? Man equals mortal. Socrates equals man. Socrates equals mortal. You have 3 judgments. And each of those judgments is expressed in a proposition. So I've already got the propositions labeled. And then finally, we have the deductive inference. In the deductive inference, I'm going to just read the definition. That is, if the bell rings, stay for this. We do deductive inference when we make the logical connections in our minds between the terms in the argument in a way that shows us that the conclusion either follows or does not follow from its premises. That's a mouthful. But basically, we're just saying the deductive inference is where you reason through, okay, well, if this proposition and this proposition, then this is the proposition that follows. Or this proposition does not follow. That's a deductive inference. And when you express it, it's a syllogism, aka your argument. And a syllogism is all 3 of the propositions with the therefore. So just to review, terms, men, mortal, Socrates. Propositions, all men are mortal, Socrates is a man, Socrates is immortal. Syllogism, the whole thing with the therefore. Because the syllogism embodies the fact that you're making a conclusion coming to the third proposition using the other 2. And just to review, in formal logic, what we are doing is we are taking 2, hopefully truths, but they may not be true, and out of the 2 things that we know, your 2 propositions you're starting with, you're creating a third proposition logically, and that process is called your deductive inference. Any questions? All right, I'm going to let you out however many seconds early this is. So, now I'm not really allowed to let you guys out early, but it is like a matter of seconds, so I don't think any of you will be out of the door until it's time. But, okay, yes?
I'm curious that everyone wrote down. Are we not reading those?
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yes, I forgot. Okay, well, the last few seconds. Give me your best syllogism each table. Yes? Nah, I ran out of time. I am so sorry. Save them for next week. And remind me next week.
Take this with you. No, since I won't remember. Okay.
Just put it in your binder.